Hi, this is Alvaro Espinosa again with the Business Excellence Group. We're going to discuss today some of the tools that we use for demand management but also component planning. So, in the last part of our discussion, we left it where we defined for every item what are the weekly forecasted volumes in this column, what is the standard lead time of the part. We for practical teaching purposes we use 20 weeks all across, and also we discuss about safety stock, what the MOQ means, the multiple order quantity, minimum, maximum, and reordering points, depending on the policy that you want to adopt for your inventory and what is the level of service you want to have. You can drive your supply demands or your inventory projections and planning to meet the minimum, maximum, or the reordering point. We will discuss that today, how you do that and how you plan for every component based on supply demand and an assumed um, forecasted sales plan, how to procure materials in a way that you don't leave, as I said, money on the table or revenue without being able to convert it. So we discussed also that it's important to establish this profile. This is called the master file. This is also known as plan for every part master file, and we will eventually get there so we can actually establish this master file. But what I want to discuss today, as I said, we discuss about the A parts, what are the characteristics of them, the B parts and C parts. We're gonna check now how to plan and really get control and predictability in the A parts that are normally in the companies are the ones that are high dollars and longer lead time, and also are very significant in high demand, and also are the drivers of revenue or the drivers of inventory turns. Normally it's the opposite, right? The more revenue you drive, the more costly you are, and if the part doesn't move correctly and in a good way, then your inventory turns will drop. So it's very important to identify those items in your planning um, um, detail. So now let's go to this next tab, where basically I'm going to explain what happened next after you have that overall plan. So the first thing that you do is to you need to make sure that all the A parts has what I will explain, that all these parts has um, a planner that takes care of the component. In other words, you need to make sure that that for every of these components you have very well established who is the planner buyer. In this case, I'm putting myself there, Alvaro Espinosa. As I said, this is for component A type, and then have very, very clear the lead time of the part, and also in that let's say scorecard or detail, the planner needs to understand if there is potential model changes or models or part numbers that will take over this part. So with that, and also the base cost. So all these items, this person, as I said on our call, needs to be the expert on these components, on the profile of the components. So the next thing we need to have is to have our sales projections for those items. In this case, it's a pretty high demand item. It's 42,000 pieces for the year, and we have that divided by month. And this profile is very well known and committed by the sales team, and the next thing that I want to say is that you you have to have the ability to also establish and monitor the the performance of the part, right? You need to know the revenue. You also need to know the actual units sold per month, as we discussed. You will have to have also those deltas, and then based on the actual performance of the forecast, you will be able to every month, at least once a month, in some companies this is done by week, but at least once a month reconcile the sales and then establish what I will call demand profile for this part. That's the step number one. And from there, the first thing that a good buyer planner does is understanding there is a level load, or there is some bumps in the planning, or there is, for instance, the actual demand of this component is actually the following. I had altered this before, but this is the actual demand where we're gonna be backfilling the performance parts. These 84 parts were added to July, and then, but you see how this has a big peak in July. So what I'm talking about is that the buyer planner needs to, the first thing that they need to do is to question if there is some opportunity to level out this demand, maybe spread out 6,000 in July, 6,000 in August, or something like that, to make this less steep. But it needs to be in conjunction with the sales team or the account managers to make sure that and if then a specific project is launched in July, or there is some specific drivers for November, those needs to be understood and break down. So this profile is not a random number. So anyway, once you do that, you understand the profile of the part. This is only the profile for this component. The next thing to do is assemble what I call a supply demand, or what is also known in other companies as a 30, 60, 90 day analysis. So in this case, as we discussed, this part has a lead time of 20 weeks and a consumption rate average for the year of 895 parts, which is basically 42,000 divided in the total 48 weeks that are the working weeks of what we normally have in a manufacturing environment. So once you do that, the next thing to do, you lay out gross requirements. This is a very known term in the supply chain world. Is the gross requirements, which is basically corresponds to your demand. But now we are going to divide them in weekly buckets, and this is very significant because the A parts, as we define, the POs are as a rule of thumb, they are placed in a weekly basis. So you need to plan your or break down your demand of the month in weekly buckets. So in this case, April have some days in the week 14. So we define these 5 weeks here as the quantities for April. So basically, this 1896 divided by 5 will give us the demand per week. And that scenario, you do these gross requirements flat, and then you go ahead and put for May, you establish again, May is a month of 5 weeks as well, these 5 weeks right here, and then you spread out that volume into these weeks, right? And so on and so forth. And as minimum, you need to go beyond, you go the lead time plus 3, or lead time plus 4. In this case, we're gonna be planning the horizon of 20 weeks. But as I said, it's desirable that you go at least 3 weeks out, right? Because otherwise you may be losing visibility of items that you need to be placing in the following 2 or 3 weeks. So let me explain this more in detail. So you have the gross demand in this line, as I said, in weekly buckets. Then out of your system, you need to lay it out per week the receptions that are already of open POs. It's also called on order. Components on order, right? Or scheduled receipts. So you put them when they are due. And normally this exercise, the planner buyer needs to make sure that these confirmation, these arrivals are absolutely confirmed and reconfirmed with the vendor. And the logistics and lead times of releasing the material from customs, whatever the hurdles are to get the material on your inventory are taken into account, and this week that is this material is supposed to arrive really arrives in that week. So you lay out those receptions, and then you put what is your inventory on hand, what is your, let's say, inventory initial inventory position. So in this case we are using random numbers just for the for teaching the tool. So we are assuming 100 pieces as our current week. It's very important in planning to understand your present week. So we are seated on 100 pieces, and then we go ahead and calculate what is the final inventory. And it's very simple. What you do, basically, the formula is you add for a given day, in this case this 135 is basically you add the previous day or the previous week, last day of that week inventory position plus receptions minus requirements give you your end inventory. In this case, the number is 100. You need to be adding, subtracting 369, but then offsetting that with 400, then you have a positive projected inventory on hand of 131, right? And then you don't have, in this case, we're gonna start with day one and you don't have any planned orders. So with that, you basically run the same exercise where this inventory on hand is the initial inventory of the following day, and then you do the same. You run this formula, and then you start establishing what are the total gaps that you have in quantity for this inventory, and you account with the receptions. In this case, you're gonna receive 100 pieces here, and so you need to account from them, and then this number nets out those receptions and establish what is the gap that you are carrying. So at the end of the day, you continue this process. You are in 2,174 minus 464 additional requirements plus 200. It mitigates a little bit these 200 pieces that are arriving, but it's not enough. So what the planner needs to do is to establish, okay, based on my lead time of 20 weeks right here, I'm seated in week 13. This week or next week, I need to be placing, at least for my next 20 weeks, what is the quantity I need to be placing? In this case, in order to repair this deficit, right, this negative, what it means is that you don't have, this is a stock out. You start having a stock out right here in week 15, and then every time that the customer wants this component, since you don't have enough even to catch up with the current demand, you will just be losing sales all these 20 weeks, and that's what we don't want. So that's why planning, doing a supply demand per all these high dollar components, the A type, is really important for your organization. So the next thing that the planner buyer do or should do is say, okay, I need to repair this situation. These planned orders are not enough for me to cover this demand. So today I need to be placing, and based on lead time, you count In this case, we count that we are in this week. As a pre-processing lead time, if I need to get approvals or revalidate pricing or whatever, you will be running out of that week. So the arrival of the material will be projected until week 34, which is basically simple. It's like you are sitting in week 13 plus 20 in week 33, 34, you're going to be receiving the material. So we go and place an order of 12,300, and in this case, the planner needs to say, okay, it's a multiple of 10, right? My MOQ, as you see here, is 10, right? So multiples of 10. So my order here, I need to be respecting that. And of course, you need to be talking to your vendor, understanding what is the commit, if they have some inventory, if they can ship something earlier, whatever it is. But then you go ahead and place an order for 12,310, right? And then you need to project when that material is going to arrive, and in this case arrives in week 20, right? You need to do the order confirmation and have the vendor really committing to this week to ship probably earlier, so these parts arrive in week 34. And you see then the instrument tells you, okay, so that's what is called red, yellow, green, because this is red. We can define this, the position is red right now, but then it becomes really red here, and then here again is in this case will be yellow, because you are still not in the inventory policies that you need. So in the organizations that I've been working with, the code is very simple. If you are below let's assume that you want to have the minimum quantity, or let's say that you want to have the reordering point. You want to have at all times 18,345. If you are below that number, then but you have inventory, the part is called a yellow. All these parts that are negative, those are called reds, right? And then you have yellow, and in this case you don't have a green position. And if you tell your buyer, say, I want you to be driving for my reordering point, which is the middle point between minimum and maximum. So you will be driving for 18,348. So then the buyer, to fix the situation or to get to that policy and make sure that you don't lose those sales, what he needs to do is to say, okay, I want to go from yellow, I need to be in my minimum, so I need to actually, let's see what I do. If I go ahead and I can place only my 16 here that are negative to be, in this case is 20, right? Is multiple of 10. So I can place another 10. These are my planned or release orders, which is the biggest decision. This is the part that is the node of everything. This is where you're gonna be placing orders to replenish these quantities. So in this case, if you look at that, actually these 6,000 are not planned. So you will be again making this part yellow again, but then it's gonna be red all the way through. So what you need to really do is to say, okay, if I want to make a green, I need to be hitting my 18,000. So what I'm gonna do is I need to plan for, let's go for 18,400 right here. And those parts, if we follow this process, is gonna be plus 20 is in week 36, you're gonna receive this 18,400. And when that happens, then you are in policy, you are within your target of minimum, the minimum to hit the reordering point. So in this case, then the component start being green, and from that point on, you say, okay, this is a green part. So in this case, let me just go a little bit higher. So this is like we can actually show how the green works. So this order that is placed on week 16, let's say, arrives in week 36, and then you see all these numbers that are above of our reporting point are going to be considered as green, right? And then this part, when you start going down, you still have inventory position, but then you create this criteria will be okay. We are below that number, and all this very easy to program in your system. You will have a yellow position. So in Ape components, the target is to have them in green, meaning meeting or inventory policy. In this case, the minimum of 18,348. So very simple tool, however, implies that you need to have a lot of data and a lot of things figured out, which is, as again, summarizing the sales forecast, very, very detailed. You will need to be reconciling this number in a weekly basis and make sure that these numbers, if loaded in the system, and if that have either an effect of upside or downside, that will be modifying your projections, and then your POs will be also modified. So my recommendation is that you don't go ahead and place. I just did that for the teaching purposes, but normally you are better off really dividing these orders in lower quantities, and maybe say, okay, I want to fulfill my position, so I will go probably in 4 weeks and place, I rather place 4 orders in 4 weeks, so that way I'm going to continue monitoring my inventory, right, and keep placing my POs accordingly, but that will give me more visibility of where do I need to be. So you see, maybe I will have a yellow for a longer time, but I'm able to react in case that the sales doesn't happen or there is a change in the demand. That's why materials and sales needs to be teaming up to really make sure that you can serve your customers in your planning efforts. So I hope that this video will help you to implement this. We're going to be reviewing this with your team in detail, but at this point, I think that this tool is what we need. And as I said, if you are a planner buyer, what you want is to make this for every component that is an A. So it's very critical that we don't overload our teams. And when we do this classification of the ABC, we did that before, based on lead time, cost, and etc. We do it in a way that will give the team the prioritization and the time to really go and plan better the items that matter the most. You know, the more expensive, the longer lead time. So I hope that this video was helpful, and we will let you know when we have another one similar to this in the future. Thank you so much, and see you soon.